Good afternoon and welcome to the LinkedIn Sales Leaders Summit 2020. I'm Becky Schnaufer, the Director of LinkedIn Sales Solutions for the UK and Ireland, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. I'm going to walk you through the online experience as we navigate our packed afternoon of content and speakers. It sounds so normal to be saying that, like the introductions to so many summit events that we've welcomed you to in previous years. But of course, this isn't quite like any summit event that we've held in the past. We're not all gathered together in one room, and I'm not looking out at your faces and spotting and waving to people that I know. We probably do all have our coffees, except this time we'll have made them ourselves, and we haven't had the chance to mingle and network as we normally do at these events. But you know what? As sales leaders, as sales professionals, we're already more than used to this. We know that on one level, everything is different. We also know when we deploy technology creatively and thoughtfully, we can still create an experience that works. It delivers value differently, but it might even deliver more value. We've designed this summit as an immersive virtual experience. That means we'll be aiming to deliver all of the content and experiences that you'd be enjoying if we were all together face to face, but we'll be delivering them in a slightly different way. We're coming to you via our own event live stream platform and also from our own LinkedIn Sales Solutions showcase page on LinkedIn Live. And all of our speakers, interviewees, and panel guests will be appearing on screen. You'll be able to interact in real time via the chat function on LinkedIn Live or follow the hashtag LinkedIn Sales Summit on our LinkedIn Sales Solutions showcase page. We will be moderating the LinkedIn Live chat function to share with our speakers and our panelists. So if they have time, they will answer your questions live. You'll also have noticed that your agenda includes several breakout sessions. We're mindful that sitting at your screen all afternoon can be challenging. These are opportunities for you to sit back and recharge your batteries a little. But for those of you who'd like to, there are also opportunities to engage with some of the issues we're raising in different ways. We've got LinkedIn sales experts standing by to grab a virtual coffee and talk through the ideas we're discussing in our sessions and how you can put them into practice. And if you haven't already arranged to jump onto a video or phone call with your LinkedIn representative during these breaks, then now is a great opportunity. Just drop them a quick email and they'll arrange to connect with you. They're monitoring their inboxes as I speak. We've also created a LinkedIn sales library for you to explore at your own pace over your afternoon breaks. You can navigate to it through the event hub by scrolling to the LinkedIn library section and selecting it. It's also linked under the agenda on the live screen player. In it, you'll find the research reports and analysis that many of our speakers will be referring to, and our latest thought leadership in the form of blog posts on virtual panels. And if you don't have time to make it around the library today, don't worry. It will be staying open for you to explore on an ongoing basis after the event. Right, now that you're fully equipped to make the most of the afternoon, I will be shortly introducing Liam for our first keynote session, Empowering Teams Through Technology, which will explore the crucial role that sales technology needs to play as we navigate this new world. As I do so, I am aware that like all technology companies, we at LinkedIn spend a lot of time talking about the future. If you've joined us at events like this before, you'll have heard us describing the future of sales. We've talked about the competitive advantage that organizations secure when they see where the curve of innovation is leading. Today, we won't be talking about the future of sales in quite the same way, because that future has arrived ahead of schedule. It's here, it's now. We're no longer gazing at it or predicting it. We're innovating and designing around it. As sales leaders, our challenge is to make this suddenly present future work for both sellers and buyers. And although that still feels like a daunting challenge, we'll be making the case that when we approach this intelligently and intentionally, we can make it work better. So with that thought in mind, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Liam Halpin, Vice President Sales for EMEA and LATAM. Liam has 30 years experience in B2B sales across Ireland, the UK, Europe, the Middle East, and most recently, Latin America. During this time, he's worked for organizations such as Dell, Siemens, Panasonic, and Canon, and joined us at LinkedIn 4 years ago. Liam is coming to us live today from his home office in Ireland for his keynote session, which will be starting shortly. So I look forward to seeing you back here on our virtual main stage at 2:15 p.m.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the first of our live Virtual Leaders Summits taking place across Europe from November to January. We are aiming to make this as rich an experience as our in-person events are, and we'd love to hear your feedback afterwards. Today, we're going to talk to you about our views on the shift to remote selling, how this is impacting on the confidence of sellers, and the changes we're seeing in buyers' expectations. We're also going to introduce you to our philosophy on an approach we've titled Buyer First, and importantly, how to activate it and the advantages it offers organizations who embrace it. A year ago, when we presented at our Sales Technology Summit in London, we explored the growing importance and role sales technology is playing in unlocking the insights that sales needs to win and grow in today's B2B relationship-led marketplaces. We also compared the more widespread use of sales technology that we've seen at US companies over several years and how this potentially advantages them versus their European peers. We explored how US companies were seeing lower attrition in their B2B salespeople and were also retaining those salespeople as employees for longer, two things we believe are potentially indicators of higher productivity. We spoke about the concept of relationship capital, a valuable resource all organizations are sitting on, but in many cases can't scope or fully understand unless they've invested in sales technology. And at that stage, we were describing the future of sales and the advantages that came from getting to that future early, and importantly, ahead of your competition. Well, look what 2020 has brought us. Today, the situation is very different. The future has arrived suddenly and ahead of the schedule that most sales organizations were planning around. One dramatic shift we saw at the beginning of the pandemic was the amount of time that sales professionals across Europe, the UK, the Middle East, and Africa spent learning about social selling on LinkedIn Learning. In March, it shot up by 71% and by another 93% in April. And that information tells a story of a whole host of things that have been happening. The effective disappearance of face-to-face meetings, the sudden and dramatic shift to working from home, the absence of trade shows and other in-person events for the foreseeable future, and last but not least, the sudden ubiquity of Zoom, Teams, BlueJeans, and other video call technologies. And who would have thought this time last year that the phrase to define 2020 would be, "You're on mute"? Who would have thought that we'd miss airports and the terrible coffee and motorway service stations on your way to see your customers? What all of this means for us as sales professionals is that the future is suddenly the present, and being a part of it's no longer optional. Sales organizations and sales professionals can't choose to be more comfortable selling in a traditional way. The traditional way no longer exists. It's also meant that some of our traditional beliefs have been exposed not to be as steadfast and true as we may once have imagined. An example being that in certain markets and industries, people professing that doing business was only possible face-to-face. And in one such market 2 weeks ago, I spoke to the VP of sales at a customer of ours. They're in the IT services industry. They closed out on the second half of their financial year, April to September, at approximately 120% of plan. However, their EBITDA performance was over 140%, and it represented their best profitability performance ever. And yes, while they have had to spend more money in enabling their teams to work from home, this is far less than you would have previously spent on travel and entertainment. This is the way that we're now operating. And the important thing that we have had to realize as business leaders is that there's no going back to how exactly it was before. In May, McKinsey carried out an interesting survey of B2B buyers in Europe, in which those buyers were 2 times more likely to say that they preferred digital sales interactions to traditional face-to-face sales conversations. And once the genie gets out of the bottle, it doesn't go back in. Once the future has arrived, you don't get the luxury of a time machine to help you escape from it. And across our markets globally and here in Europe, we've seen a secular shift to virtual selling, a shift that is widespread, long-term, irreversible. And our challenge now is making sure that our new reality improves things both for our buyers and for our sales teams. The first challenge we face is, to many salespeople, this has literally felt like the end of their world, particularly those we surveyed in late 2019. Before the pandemic, and as part of putting together our annual State of Sales report, 55% of B2B salespeople in this region told us that they would struggle to build relationships without face-to-face meetings. And these are field sales reps who, for many years, thrived on in-person contact and their skill in controlling a room, and are challenged when they find themselves suddenly removed from that. Many of them are struggling to stay motivated when working remotely. A lot of them are struggling to see how they can prevent their pipeline reducing and how they can keep closing deals. But equally, many salespeople are not. In fact, we're seeing many businesses thrive, like the IT services one I mentioned earlier, as they had already taken the first steps in virtual selling, investing in technology, investing in their people, and adapting their processes. This is now delivering them competitive advantage and fueling growth at a time of disruption on a global scale. But what about the buyers out there? It will be one thing if the buyers were similarly frustrated with the current situation. If a majority of buyers also felt that they would struggle to be effective without face-to-face meetings with sellers, if they were just waiting for this to be all over so they could get back to engaging with sales in the old-fashioned way. But from what we can see, they're not. McKinsey ran another survey in September, 6 months into the pandemic, and found that B2B buyers are becoming increasingly happy with a virtual buying journey. And in that survey, only between 20 to 30% of B2B buyers have indicated that they want to interact with sales reps in person again, even in an ideal post-COVID world when it will be safe to meet face-to-face again. And 97% of B2B decision makers have indicated they're happy to make purchases through a wholly digital and virtually enabled buyer journey. Now, you can look at this and see a negative, and many sales leaders at the moment look at it this way. I don't. But we should hear it for what it is. It's a wake-up call, and we need to listen carefully to that call. In B2B relationship sales, I don't see an end to engagement between buyers and sellers. I'm a firm believer in the old saying that people buy from people. What I see here is that buyers have found an experience of sales that works better for them. It's an experience of sales that's more efficient, that distills out the best bits and leaves some of the unnecessary parts behind. I firmly believe that people will buy from people who deliver the experience that buyers want. And as sales leaders, we have to see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity that in some ways we're actually more capable of investing in than we were previously. For many organizations, the expenses saved from the disappearance of flights, in-person meetings, events, it's created an unprecedented opportunity to reinvest in the digital sales journey that our buyers want to follow. And in many cases, we've heard from sales leaders saying that their business leadership teams are struggling to justify going back to the way it was based on current business results, which in many cases are the same or better top-line results, but with improved profitability. We're seeing this at LinkedIn too. Earlier this week, one of our mid-market and enterprise sellers in Germany concluded a sale with a customer that he nor anyone else at LinkedIn has met face-to-face. An opportunity that kicked off in late February, and through dozens of virtual engagements, including engagement at C-level, engagement with sales and sales operations leaders, marketing, and with individual sellers involved in a pilot, normally for us, and particularly in this segment, many of those meetings would have taken place in person. This customer is a specialist engineering company. They've invested in all of their salespeople globally having licenses, and an end-to-end virtual sales experience for us and for them. And this is but one example of many enterprise and mid-market new business wins and existing customer connections that we've seen in our business since March. It's really demonstrated what's possible in a wholly virtual sales experience. But being able to invest in digital sales isn't automatically the same as creating the right digital buying experience. The digital sales journey that buyers are responding to doesn't just involve the same sales encounters, but now taking place through Zoom or through Teams instead of face-to-face. Because digital journeys are self-directed by nature, and because buyers now expect and need to use time more efficiently, it's vital that the encounters with salespeople deliver tangible value from the outset and at every stage through the buying process. At LinkedIn, we have a phrase for this type of experience and the methodology that delivers it. It's called Buyer First. Buyer First is both a philosophy and a practical, applicable methodology. It's a model that respects the buyer's evolving needs and expectations while also respecting sellers' expertise and time. When we say Buyer First, we mean putting the following things first in the way that we design the buyer's experience of sales: the buyer's access to information, the buyer's individual business challenges, the buyer's way of working, and the buyer's company's success. And on the face of it, that doesn't sound so radical. Everybody in sales talks about putting the buyer first. And whenever we ask sellers here in Europe whether they put the buyer first, effectively, everyone says yes. The problem is, yet again, buyers don't agree. And in recent research from CSO Insights, only 27% of B2B buyers believe that vendor representatives are truly knowledgeable about the buyer's specific business. And unless you have a meaningful sales intelligence, you can't be buyers first in a meaningful sense. You can't proactively invest time in understanding the opportunities, identifying where there's genuine value to add in terms of the buyer's success, and designing a buying process that fits into their way of working. And many are saying that they are putting the buyer first. They're actually putting the buyer second, because the focus on the buyer only happens at the point in the process when they're ready for it. We can no longer expect people to give up their time first, the expectation that we'll put together something to meet their needs later on. We need a way to credibly lead with proactive suggestions that are relevant to them specifically and clearly plot a path to specific value. We believe the data shows that the best source of this type of meaningful sales intelligence just happens to be LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Between March and May 2020, Sales Navigator users made 5 times more connections to decision makers than the average non-user using LinkedIn.com. So why do connections matter? For salespeople, what you might want to know that. What makes us believe that this is important? Well, after a lot of work, our LinkedIn Sales Solutions data scientists recently released new figures from an analysis that we've completed across 3,225 of our CRM synced customers, an analysis that spans more than 20 million opportunities, covering multiple geos, industries, and company sizes. And here's what our data scientists tell me. When you're dealing with data at this scale, you enter into the realms of statistical significance. When a finding is significant, it means we can feel confident that it's a real indicator and not the same as a lucky sample. So think statistical significance in this way. You could ask 5 people if they like Marmite, and all 5 could say yes. That's what's called a lucky sample. We all know the significant statistics on Marmite at scale, and for those of you who are interested, I'm in the half of the general population who doesn't like it. Bottom line, these are big numbers that we've analyzed, and we're confident in what they indicate. So from this analysis, we found that where sellers are connected on LinkedIn with 6 or more decision makers at their customers and prospects, that on average, this helps increase pipeline generation by up to 18%, increases win rates by up to 7%, or perhaps most interesting, in deal sizes being up to 33% higher. And all of these stats are being compared to those opportunities where sellers are connected to less than 6 people. And then when we look at the top quartile of Sales Navigator customers in this analysis, we found that those companies are achieving deal sizes up to 70% larger, win rates increasing by up to 14%, and 20% more opportunities sourced by their sales reps using Sales Navigator when they have 6 or more connections per opportunity. And this magic combination of connections and technology makes a real difference And we believe they can make an even bigger difference when used with a buyer-first approach. Buyer-first is absolutely an approach that's tech-enabled by definition. It's the technology that provides the platform for shifting the role of sellers towards being providers of strategic counsel and becoming genuine trusted advisors. The 2020 LinkedIn State of Sales data shows this is how many of Europe's top performing sellers already position themselves, but technology won't do this on its own. I mentioned earlier the opportunity we have to invest in the funds that we're saving from the absence of travel, events, trade shows, in-person meetings. There's also a vital opportunity to invest some of the time we've saved. We need to invest that time in embedding a buyer-first methodology, because it's the organizations that succeed in doing this that will come out on top. I've been in B2B technology sales now for over 30 years, and I've worked with many businesses and government agencies across this region. I've lived through lots of technology innovations and disruptions. Remember the joy of receiving your first email, the first brick mobile phone that you had, and how happy you were to use CRM instead of 5x4 cards. Well, there's a story about my grandfather that always springs to mind to me when we talk about applying technology. It goes back all the way to 1981. My dad bought him a color TV with a remote control, a state-of-the-art piece of tech enablement at the time. And my grandfather quickly concluded the best way to ensure he didn't lose the remote was to leave it on top of the TV at all times. So as a result, every time he wanted to change the channel, increase or decrease the volume, he got up out of his chair, walked to the TV, pressed the appropriate button on the remote, put it back on the top of the TV, and walked back to his armchair. Almost exactly the same process he used before he had a remote control. He was enabled by technology, but he didn't change his process and therefore didn't get the value that was available from that technology. Oh, and not only was this the process he implemented for himself, I still remember what happened when one of us grandkids used a remote control the way that had been designed by the good folks at Philips. Nobody got the value because my granddad didn't change his way of doing things. And look, as funny and twee as the story of my granddad is, this happens in businesses every day. People invest in technology, distribute it to users, but in some cases don't inform, educate, and change the processes needed to extract the full value and potential of the technologies. The fact is, technology is only as good as the strategy that underpins it. If the strategy is flawed, the technology alone can't fix it. So if we're to deliver the buyer-first experience that our customers and prospects now look for, we need to think beyond just equipping our teams with tools and develop a strategy for empowering them to use those tools in the right way. Firstly, we need sales leadership that recognizes the inherent challenges that our people face in reinventing the way they operate and in a credible way that helps them with the transition. As Mary Shea, principal analyst and thought leader in the sales and marketing world at Forrester Research, said recently, everything moving forward really needs to be constructed about how the buyer wants to buy versus how we want to sell. Secondly, we need a clear methodology that gives direction to which tech tools you're using and how you're using them. A methodology that helps salespeople design the buying process around the customer and their needs rather than just rushing them through a pre-programmed set of steps. This is crucial for thriving in a buyer-first era of sales. Sales organizations that have a properly embedded understanding of their own methodology win 53% more of their forecasted deals. But perhaps more importantly, we need to make a commitment to coaching, to embed that methodology on an ongoing basis. And in our State of Sales survey, roughly a third of sales reps say that they think coaching should be one of the top 2 activities they spend time on with their manager, but only a quarter say that it is currently. On the other hand, top performing sellers who exceed their quota by 25% or more are 48% more likely to get the level of coaching that they would like. The future of B2B sales is a tech-enabled one. It will also continue to be enabled by human beings, namely those leaders of sales organizations that recognize what's involved in empowering their people and are prepared to invest the time and resources in making it happen. So with that in mind, I'd like to leave you with 3 areas that I think all of us should be thinking about as we aim to keep planning a way forward. The first is modeling compassion. Are we taking the time to understand the issues that our sellers are facing in this transition and investing in credible solutions for them? Are we building a culture where they feel empowered and incented to do the same for their buyers? Second is around redesigning processes. Are we building methodologies for virtual selling around experiences the buyers want from this transition? Or are we just finding ways to scale digitally the experiences they've already rejected? And last but not least, deploying technology. Are we investing in the right tech tools with a clear purpose around bringing buyers and sellers closer? Bringing all of this together with a buyers first philosophy at the center will help us all succeed in the years ahead. We've some exciting sessions coming up on all 3 areas, these 3 areas, hosted by my colleagues Sinead, Stephen, and all the way from California. We're delighted to welcome Lindsay Edwards, our VP of Product at LinkedIn Sales Solutions. And she's joining us to talk about our product vision, what we have in store for you inside Sales Navigator for the next year, and the exciting launch of a new product, LinkedIn Sales Insights. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you found this session valuable. I'm now handing you back to Becky, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Goodbye for now.
Thank you so much, Liam. That's a great insight into a very different landscape that sales teams are facing today. I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that there's no going back to the way that things were for sales before the coronavirus pandemic. And I think it's interesting, however, that the data is showing so early on that whilst many sales teams are wondering how they'll cope, buyers are fine with this virtual sales process. It's fantastic to learn more about the role that technology plays too. For more on that, be sure to stay tuned to our product demo at 3:45. The most interesting part for me as a sales leader, however, is this idea of putting the buyer first and at the heart of your customer interactions. This is an idea we feel strongly about at LinkedIn. So what I'd say to you all is don't be afraid to reach out to your sales rep to discuss how LinkedIn Sales Navigator can help your organization benefit from adopting a buyer-first approach. And if you don't have a sales rep, you can request to speak to one of our sales teams. We're now going to take a coffee break to let those ideas sink in. Please take this opportunity to look at our library. As a reminder, you'll find the library towards the bottom of the event hub page and below the agenda on the live stream page, which you can enter by pressing the link. And of course, now's your opportunity to catch up with our LinkedIn sales experts about putting these ideas into practice. If you've not had the time to schedule your catch up, drop them a quick email now. I'll be back here at 3 o'clock to introduce our next session, a star-studded customer panel hosted by Sinead McCabe, the Director of Sales Solutions for EMEA at LinkedIn. She's going to be joined by panelists from Oracle, Veolia, and Vodafone. They're going to be discussing how they're equipping their sales teams to build relationships virtually and adapt to the new virtual world of selling. See you after the break.
Face-to-face relationships were essential to the way we worked. Now, clients have a new set of problems. LinkedIn Sales Navigator helps me connect with customers in this new reality. It's about putting the buyer first. Making sure you have a clear understanding of what they need is what's going to make the partnership successful.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're feeling refreshed, recharged, and ready for our next session, which is one that I'm really excited about. You know, at LinkedIn, we could talk about sales strategy and technology all day, but there's a new topic that's risen to the fore in under a year that's dominated how we all live and work. I'm obviously talking about the effects of COVID-19. And this year, we at LinkedIn have spent a lot of time thinking about the impact on our sales teams and on our customers. Because whilst finding a way to ensure our businesses thrive is essential, we must keep the well-being of our teams at the forefront of our minds, given the changes that they are facing in their current professional landscape. A sales strategy is only as capable as the team in place to execute it. And this is why we've dedicated our next session to exploring how, as leaders, we are managing change within our teams. So I am delighted to hand you over for the next half hour to LinkedIn's Director of Sales Solutions EMEA, Sinead McKay. Sinead will be discussing the topic of compassionate sales leadership with our guest panelists. And just a quick reminder, if you'd like to follow the conversation, be sure to follow hashtag LinkedIn Sales Summit on our LinkedIn Showcase page or via LinkedIn Live on the chat function. Over to you, Sinead.
Thank you, Becky. Hi, everyone. My name is Sinead McKay, and I run the customer side of the LSS business across EMEA, and I'm delighted to be here again this year to host the customer panel. Earlier on, Liam mentioned a thought-provoking stat, and that is that over 55% of salespeople depend on face-to-face meetings to build relationships, and they can't really imagine being successful in any other way. When I hear this stat, I really feel for those salespeople. These are professionals who in most cases excel at their job. They have really valuable skills, including building rapport, directing attention in a room, and reading nonverbal cues. And now, through no fault of their own, all of this has been taken away from them, and they need to find a way to succeed on different terms. Helping these people make the transition and finding ways to apply their strengths positively in the new sales environment has to be one of the top priorities for our sales leaders today. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so speaking about just that. Fortunately, I've got three great panelists who are going to share their views and perspectives, and I'd like to introduce them. First, we have Anne Sheehan, who is the Director of Vodafone Business UK. Secondly, Simon Futcher, UK Regional Sales Director for Veolia. And as sales leaders are not alone in this transition, it's also good to get some insights from one of our most important cross-functional partners in the shape of Declan Kenny, VP Demand Generation Oracle. Welcome to you all, and thanks for being here today. Right, so to start with, I wanted to get your view on the scale and scope of the transition that we're dealing with today. We've heard data from McKinsey that suggests that the majority of B2B buyers don't really mind if they don't interact with a face-to-face salesperson again. Simon, does this align with your experience? And are we seeing a long-term shift in how buyers and customers want to engage?
Hi, Sinead. Great question. I think for me, the experience now is a varied one based on key differences we see between the buying demographic and the specific sales cycle that it applies to. And what I mean by that is that we see a change in landscape in the SME transactional selling space. It's historically been a very face-to-face environment. That has changed recently. It's made way for a much more digital and virtual experience. And I wouldn't necessarily say that that's always been at the request of the customer. I think there's a more general acceptance now by customers that they're going to have to engage and trade in this way. And it's something that we need to be very aware of and also very sympathetic to in terms of our approach. I think when you consider the higher value, the bigger ticket strategic or solution sales that always require a far more shaping of that procurement process at the top end of the funnel. Certain industries have been slower adopters of digital and have always required a more hands-on physical approach in terms of the way that they want to engage. But I think they're slowly recognizing the value that can be delivered by a more virtual engagement process early on, not just in terms of the value, but I think also in terms of the speed and the efficiency of that process. And I think this is becoming probably more closely aligned when we review new business activity versus existing customer organic growth, because customers are now benefiting from a more comprehensive communication process, updates, project updates, issue resolution, reports, etc., are now more regularly discussed on the fly rather than they were in terms of waiting for monthly customer review meetings where both parties tended to always sort of store up content rather than use technology and digital to resolve those address those issues in a more live way. So I think that for me now is driven a much more dynamic acceptance towards a more digital engagement program.
Thanks, Simon. So Declan, what do you see as the future of face-to-face? Can we make a wholly digital buyer journey as effective as one that previously included face-to-face or in-person meetings?
Yeah, thanks, Sinead. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge this is tough now for sales. It sure is. I mean, not only are we asking them to do sales cycles remotely, but a lot of them are doing it, you know, literally hitting a number from their bedroom, right? So this is the reality. It's tough out there. There are a few things, though, that we're seeing that actually could be very positive and big opportunities. In terms of making the whole, you know, sales cycle digital, I think there's one or two things we have got to look at. One is culturally, you know, selling into the UK, for example, might be more acceptable to do it remotely than it might be to sell into upper and lower Gulf in the Middle East. We also have to look at the average deal size. If it's 7K or 70K, that can change as well in terms of face-to-face versus fully digital. The one area, though, well, there's probably three areas of pipeline and how it lives in the sales cycle. It's we create pipeline, you know, we progress pipeline, and we close pipeline. So one thing I would say, irrespective of culture or deal size, what we've seen is the create pipeline, I firmly believe, can be 100% remote and digital. If I give you a view from a kind of a rep's perspective, you know, first of all, there's probably three main steps. One is they've got to research. And now that everyone is desk-based, I think sales are getting more used to using tools for the job in order to do that research really well. So in terms of research, it's usually across the account, the persona, and the industry. And there's so much data out there. So the really successful reps over the last 6 to 8 months have been very good at doing really good research and finding the key data to craft their customized messages. I suppose the second thing that's very interesting is during the pandemic, that decision-making unit in those enterprise accounts that we work with is very much, it's got a lot smaller and more senior. So before our prospecting process would have been very ground up and grassroots, now you're talking to CEOs, CFOs, and CTOs, and they want to talk to you for, you know, real dialogue. So there's a big opportunity now for a sales rep who can craft good messages with doing good research, but now getting out and directly to those C-level execs because they are available to speak to. And also, more importantly, they're meeting more internally at board level as well. So they may have met every 6 months. They're now meeting every 6 weeks. And the last thing I suppose I would talk about doing things digitally at a rep level is the discovery call. So you've done your research, you've identified your personas using Sales Navigator or whichever tool you wish to use, but now it's about selling that high value discovery call. So, you know, if you have senior people from the sales, from your customer side on, you may have to match that also with some senior people from your side. And, you know, you don't want to be talking to the CEO and a CFO, and then you are being introduced to a 25-year-old new starter. That might not be a good match. So you've got to think about that is how to create that great dialogue. And the last point on that discovery call, or what we're calling this high value offer, is, we have to be very clever that it's not about bant anymore and ticking boxes and asking 100 questions. It's about having great conversation about two main things. You've got to come off that discovery call with, was the customer were they able to really give you clarity on the problem that they're trying to solve? And secondly, were you able to provide some potential idea what solution you could provide? And we have witnessed things where a discovery call maybe 9 months ago might be 15 minutes. Now they might go on for an hour or 2 hours because we've got senior people on the line and we're having good discussions. So from my perspective, Sinead, is three things. We can do the research very well digitally, we can find more senior decision makers, and we can have those high value meetings all remotely as well.
Okay. I mentioned previously that there seems to be sometimes a lack of confidence from field sales and selling digitally. What is the most effective thing a sales leader can do to build that confidence for their field teams? And is there any one piece of advice that you've given your team over the last 12 months that has really resonated?
Yeah, so I think a few things in terms of advice to sales leaders. The first is know your customer and know your segments. So there are certain segments now, if you're dealing with very small businesses that actually want to buy online. So I'm in the telco industry. Sohos, can't go into stores. A lot of them are closed because of lockdown. So they're buying online. So don't fight the digital world, right? If you've got a segment that now wants to procure in a different way, you've got to embrace it. And then as you move up the larger segments, they're buying either digitally assisted. So you've got to really understand the segments you're selling to and how they're evolving. That leads me very much to kind of build on what Declan said, which is understand the challenges your customers have. I mean, I have a very, very large sales force, and a lot of them, their account development plans 12 months ago were one direction. Then we hit COVID in March and the world changed. And we very, very quickly evolved to understand what are the challenges our customers are having, and are we having conversations that are appropriate to those challenges. So most of our customers were like, please help me get my sales teams or any of my teams working remotely, help me get contact centers working from home, put contact centers virtually on the cloud in 24 hours. We had to help the NHS. I mean, the list goes on of the challenges customers had. And we really moved very, very quickly to say, let's listen to our customers, throw the rule book out the window. Some of the solutions that we were trying to sell them prior to COVID, they don't need them anymore. So you've got to listen and be super agile and make sure that you equip your sales teams really quickly with the solutions, and how to have the conversations that address customers' needs. And we did it super quickly in Vodafone. We got people on virtually, we got them trained, we got solutions out in literally over the weekend. And sometimes we co-created them with our customers. The third is to assist your sellers in the digital world. So in Vodafone, we're running pulse surveys every 3 to 4 weeks to our sellers, to our commercial teams, our marketing teams, saying, what do you need? What are you scared about? What tools do you need? Reading the verbatims that come back in the surveys. And it's been everything from, please get me a camera, please get me some, backgrounds like I have here, virtual backgrounds, because I'm trying to operate off my bedroom. Big concern was we have big innovation centers all over the UK. Our customers loved to visit them, and suddenly they're closed. So we got our grads together and said, okay, how do we create a customer experience center in a virtual world? And we got that up and running in 2 weeks, and we're full up. Our innovation centers are full up. How? We send a custom-made box out to our customer. They use these Google AR glasses, they put them on, and they feel like they're in our customer experience center. So it's giving the tools to the sales teams to say, don't be afraid, life can go on, and it's really, really possible to connect with your customers. And all that has created momentum. So it means that we've kept the business going, we've kept growing in a COVID world. And really, once you've got momentum, as we all know with sales teams, it builds confidence. The advice that I've given to my team, and the advice for whatever it's worth that I would give to any team, is look at it, for the sales profession, it's time to evolve. The world is changing. It's never going back to the way that it was. It's super exciting. We've got to be super optimistic about the future. So it's time to evolve. Our profession is now going to be different. We will sell in a virtual world much more often. We will communicate much in a digital world with our customers. The second is you've got to be curious. as individuals, your sales professionals, your commercial teams, curious, test, learn, experiment, find new technologies like, as I said, we did with the Customer Experience Center, test them. And sales leaders have got to lead from the front. You've got to be seeing yourselves to experiment with the technology, showcase it, promote it internally, reward people that are using it. And the last is a sense of purpose and pride. I know that everybody that's dialed in today is probably super proud of their teams. In my company, what we do really matters. We keep the UK connected, and that sense of pride in, the sellers basically saying we're providing solutions that are saving lives. I think giving that sense of pride and just motivating the sellers to say, in whatever industry you are, everybody's played their part to keep the world going in the last few months. So I think you got to lead from the front, be curious, and just embrace this new world.
Great. Declan, from a demand generation point of view, is there anything that marketing can do to support sales in this transition time that we're in?
Yeah, look, I think marketing are probably more important than ever, Sinead. I really do believe that. The thing is, marketing are having it tough as well. They usually discretionary spend right now. Yes, it sometimes takes a bit of pressure, but the expectations remain the same. So marketing are finding it hard as well. From my perspective at the demand generation level, we work, the pandemic has dispersed everybody. What it also has helped is internally the functions, I think, have gotten closer because we've had to. It is very important now to collaborate and get tighter with those functions that support you. I suppose there's three things, right, that marketing are really, really good at helping us right now. One is very simple customer stories. I'm in the new business world. I have to find new logos, new business, and getting customer stories that are easy to access, that you can say to a new logo, hey, trust me, I've done it in your market, I've done it in your industry, and here's a great customer that looks like you that we've worked with. Really powerful. Make it easy to access for the salespeople and also for the customer. Don't gate the asset. Send them the link. They can open it and they can freely digest that customer content. Really important, I would say, customer stories for marketing. The second thing is, look, every sales territory right now is emitting digital signals. There's lots of signals popping up, and marketing are very good at capturing that data. So I think one thing, the transition I've seen, which has worked very well, is figuring out how those digital signals that are emitting from everyone's sales territory, how you can surface that data for a salesperson. For example, if you've got a deal in flight and your CFO in the company that you're working with is currently online looking at your pricing page, that might be good information to know. Or you're breaking into a new account. One of maybe the chief technology officer is currently on an online webinar and he's raised his hand saying, I want to be contacted. Pretty important information to get to you. So I think that's the second one, is figuring out how to surface that data into sales very, very quickly. And the last thing, we talk about product marketing and digital marketing and all those great functions. They are very important, but I'm spending a lot more time at marketing operations, actually, figuring out the processes and how we can get that flow of data flowing into the demand gen teams and so forth. So there's three things, as I said, it's that customer stories, it's surfacing that great digital data that's out there, and then working with a strong marketing operations teams to get those processes in place.
Thanks, Declan.
Sure.
So the change that we're involved in now, it isn't just doing the same things. We're doing it all over Zoom at the moment. And I wanted to ask our sales leaders, do we need to change our methodology, and how do we do that through coaching? So Simon and Anne, have you changed your approach to the buyer journey, and have you adjusted targets or incentives as a result of that? And I'd like to go with Simon first, please.
Yes, we have, Sinead. In terms of adapting the approach from a buyer journey perspective, we've sped up the delivery of far more of an encompassing yet flexible online offering in the second half of this year. It's allowed for a more self-sufficient buyer journey for that demographic that requires a more personalized and in some cases a bit more of an isolated buying experience. I think we recognise there's a large element of personal everyday purchasing preferences that now shape that professional and corporate journey when it comes to selecting a new supplier or acquiring a new product, particularly as I highlighted before in the SME sectors. I think the approach from a nurturing perspective, from a pipeline perspective, has evolved significantly, and the use of tools like Navigator particularly has enabled opportunities for us to progress through that sales cycle despite variances of lockdowns, and also enabled us to effectively continue with the lead generation that we've needed to supply our teams with over the course of particularly this year. In terms of targets and incentives, I think from a Veolia standpoint, we are still running with our original 2020 targets. We were actually very close to achieving all aspects of those, which is obviously remarkable in the current climate. So from a targets and incentives perspective, we have actually kept them aligned to the way that they were when we began 2020.
Anne?
Yeah, I think what we've found is that customers are researching much more and are much more informed before they come inbound to Vodafone. And that's across small customers, SME customers and large customers. And we wouldn't necessarily have seen that in the large end. That would have been much more, we were reaching out, the customer will explore, but actually we're seeing customers much more informed before they reach out to actually buy. I think we've also seen that the front door now really is our website. And I think that's been a huge area of focus for us. So if customers are more informed, it means they're researching. And where are they going to research? They're going to go to your website first. So actually the digital content on your website, the tools that understand, well, somebody's come onto the website, they're a SME, and routing them intelligently to content that's relevant to them, and trying to do that nurturing process has really accelerated for us. We were on that journey, but actually when we hit COVID, very much like Declan said, we spent an awful lot more time with our marketing operations team to understand how we nurture those prospects, because they're not talking to us or are in front of us face to face anymore. They're actually exploring and experimenting in a completely different way. So we've had to make some really, big decisions, which is, well, we've got to fund that, we've got to put investment into that. So how do you deprioritize other ways? So I think really look at your websites, your content, the tools that you're using, and what that experience is for the customer now if they're going to explore through your website first. The second, and I kind of mentioned it previously, is understanding the buying behaviors now of your different segments. So definitely we've seen a massive acceleration to online and digitally assisted journeys for small to medium businesses. They don't have time really to talk to people anymore. They're under an awful lot of pressure. Small businesses have probably been the most affected in the last 7 or 8 months. So they need solutions quickly, and therefore they want to, complete the sale much quicker than they would have done before, versus larger organizations, which I do think the buying decision is made by much more senior. I mean, I even know for Vodafone, a lot more going to I sit on the board of the UK business, a lot going to the board. We meet much more regularly than we did before. And therefore, I think you have to be much more like, when you get the opportunity to be with the board, be on point and be, have your research done. I think in terms of targets, we have reorientated our incentive system, again, depending on the segment that our sellers were covering, some parts of our revenue, for example, if you're in telco, nobody's roaming anymore. So therefore, what we want to do is make sure that we have a motivated sales teams. So therefore, there's things that are out of their control. If it's out of their control, then we shouldn't penalize them for it. So we wanted to continue to drive growth in the market, be a challenger in the market, and we're incenting them. So we slightly tweaked our targets to make sure that they're motivated, and also that we wouldn't have channel conflict versus, customers going online as opposed to face. And so far it's really working. And it's a test and learn, right? So nobody knows the end of the movie in a COVID world. So I'm not saying what we're doing is best practice, but it's definitely driving momentum. We're winning, we're taking share in the market. So we'll keep evolving, testing, learning, experimenting, and keep going on the journey.
Great, thank you, Anne. Right, so my last question, I suppose, believe it or not, we're coming into the festive season, and it does seem a bit strange to celebrate at the moment, but I do believe that an important part of leading with compassion is to celebrate success and some of the positive things that have happened this year. My last question to all of you, it's 2 questions. One, what aspect of your team's performance would you most like to celebrate over the last 12 months? And finally, what are you really looking forward to in 2021? And I'm going to start with Anne.
So I'll make this short and brief. I'm super proud of the team and all they have done to keep the UK connected. I think we have found muscles in our anatomy that we didn't know we had. And I think that sense of pride and purpose has just been amazing. And I get emotional, but I am super proud of every single one of them. I think as we look into the future, I think I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic by nature anyway, but I think there are new revenue streams for us. I think there's a whole new world that will develop now on the back of, challenges and needs and solutions for COVID. So I think for me, I'm excited about 2021. And I'm excited. I think I'm going to learn. I think our teams are going to learn. We're going to evolve. I think we'll be a very, very different teams, very different skill sets at the end of 2021. And who doesn't find that exciting?
Simon.
I think similar vein. I think a lot of pride for 2020. I think the adaptability, the agility, and probably mainly the resilience of the teams over this period has been incredible, and very proud of the work that we do supporting some very, very key sectors, certainly like healthcare. I think that's also coupled with our sales and retention performance that we've delivered so far this year has been remarkable, and actually makes it a positive year to celebrate for all of the right reasons. I think in terms of what I'm looking forward to for 21, apart from being able to go back to the pub, I'm looking forward to utilising and I think evolving the key learnings and the skills that we've developed in 2020. These are, similar to what Anne said, these are skills that we potentially didn't even know that we had, or certainly skills we didn't know we needed to develop, but we certainly are. And I think the exciting element is evolving and increasing sales and engagement in a more digital way to aid and support us in 2021.
Thanks, Simon. Declan?
Yeah, it was interesting. Just before the pandemic, we kind of built our own vision statement, which was, we're going to challenging customers to think differently about technology. And that word challenging really helped us during COVID. Reps got more empowered, managers learned to let go. And it was like, guys, come on, we can do this. So that I'm really proud, to echo Anne's point, really proud of the team. What am I looking forward to? I'd echo Simon's point. I cannot wait. I haven't seen my parents in a long, long time. I would love to be sitting in a pub with my dad right now talking about politics and sport. I really, really would. That's one thing that I really miss at a personal level, and I just can't wait to have that back. So, that's it, Sinead, from my side.
Be a really good day to talk about projects and themes. Anyway, sadly, that's all we've got time for today. I'd really like to thank the three panelists for their time, their insights and perspectives today. And for those of you at home, please keep the conversation going by using the hashtag LinkedIn Sales Summit. Now I'm going to hand you back to Becky. She's got the virtual kettle on, ready for our next coffee break. Thanks to everybody and enjoy the rest of the event.
Wow, thank you so much to Sinead, Declan, Anne and Simon for a really thought-provoking conversation. And thank you to everyone who got involved in the conversation online too. Now, it's time for another one of those refueling, recharging breaks. You all know the drill by now. Enjoy a hot drink or a snack, stretch your legs, explore the virtual library, or dive into a discussion with one of our sales experts. I'll be back at 3:45 to introduce the next session. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm very sorry, but we are having a few technical challenges at the moment with our next speaker. So if you would all bear with us, we hope to get that resolved very, very quickly, and we will be back on live, hopefully in a few minutes. So please stay tuned, and fingers crossed, I'll be ready to introduce our next guest in a matter of minutes. Thank you.
Face-to-face relationships were essential to the way we worked. Now, clients have a new set of problems. LinkedIn Sales Navigator helps me connect with customers in this new reality. It's about putting the buyer first. Making sure you have a clear understanding of what they need is what's going to make the partnership successful.
So welcome back to the virtual main stage of our summit. I hope you've got those senses all reinvigorated and ready to go, because there's going to be a lot of exciting content to take in during the next session. It is a great pleasure to introduce LinkedIn's Vice President of Sales Solutions Product, Lindsay Edwards, who's going to present an exclusive look at the new tools and features that we're releasing for LinkedIn Sales Navigator over the next few months. Lindsay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Becky. Hello, everyone. I'm Lindsay Edwards, Vice President of Product for LinkedIn Sales Solutions. And I'm incredibly excited to be with you all here today to talk about the next era of innovation for our Sales Solutions product. Today, we're going to be covering 3 key things, kicking off with our product vision, then looking to the year ahead. And finally, I couldn't be more excited to introduce a brand new product, LinkedIn Sales Insights. But before we get to our product vision and talk about the future of selling with LSS, I think it's important to first address a trend we've been seeing in the market, which is that the distance between buyers and sellers is growing. It won't be news to many of you that it is harder than ever for sellers to reach decision makers and C-suite executives. At the same time, sales reps are spending less and less of their time actually selling, making it more difficult than ever to customize outreach and develop those trusted relationships with buyers. We at LinkedIn think we can help you and your sales teams move to a buyer's first mindset. Moving from focusing on the features and the products that sellers sell to helping solve problems on behalf of the buyer. From operating on the seller's terms, where you may miss opportunities due to lack of insights or bad timing, to the buyer's terms with unique LinkedIn insights that can tell you when the right time to reach out is. And for our friends in sales operations, from poorly assigned books of business due to bad data, to unique LinkedIn data fueling relationship-driven books of business to help your sellers be successful. And to make things more challenging, while we're moving to this buyer's first mindset, the very nature of work has changed. Many of you and your sales teams are now working from home, adopting new tactics to build relationships digitally. And for companies, marketers, and sales teams, shifting to virtual events, just like this one. Next slide, please. We want to help you through these transitions and difficult times with a product vision that focuses on 3 key pillars. First, you and your sales teams who may be using LinkedIn.com on a daily basis to gain knowledge, build and manage your networks, and establish your identities. We want to make it easier than ever to build positive reputation and trust on LinkedIn. Then for our sellers with Sales Navigator seats, we're going to move from manual search to unique insights and buyer intent, fueling smart targeting to identify the prospective customers and buyers that matter. And extending value to other roles in the sales organization, like sales operations, with CRM acceleration and our brand new product, LinkedIn Sales Insights. Our product has always helped sellers be more successful, with higher win rates, more opportunities, and larger deals. But as you and your teams are now looking to build and maintain relationships digitally, we believe Sales Navigator is more important than ever. So now, looking to the year ahead, you will see us come up with quarterly releases covering 3 key themes: how we can help you nurture existing customer relationships, maintaining books of business, and strong relationships with your customers and buyers. We want to help you make sure you can understand the value you're getting with Sales Navigator and the connection between LinkedIn and Sales Navigator and how it's uniquely helping your sellers to be more productive and successful. So, in order to introduce the roadmap for the year ahead, we're going to go through the day in the life of a relationship manager using Sales Navigator. I'd like to introduce you to Jack. Jack is a relationship manager at SmileDesk, a customer service software company. It's the start of a new fiscal year, and Jack has received his book of assigned accounts via a CSV file from his sales operations team. Jack immediately goes into Sales Navigator, where he has the ability to upload that list of CSV accounts. He assigns this list a name, a priority level, and enters key information. Once he saves that, Sales Navigator automatically generates an overview of Jack's accounts. You can see key information here, like the last time Jack reached out to each of these accounts, as well as the renewal date from CRM and the key people and decision makers at each account. Jack identifies that ZoomJax has a large opportunity coming up for renewal next month. He receives an alert that a decision maker from ZoomJax has left the company. This introduces risk to Jack's renewal. He double-clicks to look at the buyer circle at ZoomJax, and he sees that Amy has left the organization, but Sales Navigator has automatically identified the new VP of Marketing, Mia. Jack can quickly and easily create that new contact in CRM directly from within Sales Navigator. And in the meantime, Sales Navigator automatically generates a list of Bluebird opportunities, including Amy, who has left ZoomJax, but Jack had a strong relationship with Amy, and this could represent an opportunity for him in the future. At the same time, Jack goes back to his account list and notices Trustway is growing and adding headcount. He receives a real-time alert that Trustway is hiring, and he knows he needs to pay attention to this account and take advantage of a growth opportunity. Jack quickly digs into the decision makers and the people he currently has a relationship with. He asks for a quick introduction. He is able to secure a meeting, and he's off and running to explore the opportunity to grow this account. Now, for a quarter-by-quarter look at what to expect from the Sales Navigator roadmap, we'll start with our most recent release. Now available to all customers, you will see how we are putting the buyer first. For our Enterprise Edition customers, you will have buyer interest alerts letting you know when a prospective account has been researching your company or product through your LinkedIn company page or your website. For our Team Edition customers, we're helping you get closer together with CRM with expanded autosave functionality and alerts generated directly from within your CRM system, as well as new insights and ROI for our Dynamics 365 customers and extended opportunity information for the ROI reporting. Coming up in just a few weeks, you'll hear more about our roadmap ahead for this quarter, where we're going to be looking to help our users maintain and prioritize their books of business within Sales Navigator. For our Enterprise Edition customers, you'll now start to see CRM opportunity information directly within lists, helping our sellers prioritize their time. We're making it quick and easy to upload lists of accounts into Sales Navigator, where you'll quickly see priority as well as key information about last outreach activity. We're extending our Smart Links functionality to include video and URL. We have a lot of features coming to Sales Navigator, and we hope you are as excited about this roadmap as we are. But now I'd like to shift focus to a new product we'll be introducing early next year called LinkedIn Sales Insights. Our goal is to allow sales operations team to have unique data powered by LinkedIn to transform your sales planning process. Our goal is to help you build better books of business, find new accounts, and make sure your sales team is focusing on the accounts where you have the largest opportunity. LSI will help sales operations teams with territory planning and account prioritization. We want to help supercharge your sales organization with a combination of Sales Navigator and LinkedIn Sales Insights to create informed dynamic sales plans and make sure your sales team can hit the ground running with the accounts that matter the most. Clary, a software company based in California, has been piloting LinkedIn Sales Insights to help reimagine their territory planning. Their current challenge in the market is around the firmographic data they have available, and they were finding that data to be constantly out of date and inaccurate, creating inequitable books of business across their sales team. The Clary head of revenue operations notes here that LinkedIn Sales Insights has helped them to make better data-driven decisions on territory planning. They believe it's a game changer and will help their sales team to be more successful next year. Please stay tuned for more information about LinkedIn Sales Insights. We couldn't be more excited to bring this to market early next year, as well as the features mentioned in Sales Navigator. You'll hear more from us in just a few weeks about the upcoming features in next quarter's release. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you're all well.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, and apologies everybody to the various technical challenges that we had there. Lindsay was joining us from across the Pacific time, and there were a few issues that we had. Anyway, I know that there was an awful lot of food for thought in there, and I'm sure that there will be lots of you interested in getting a lot more details. Your LinkedIn sales contacts are standing by to chat through those new tools over the next few minutes as we take another coffee break. I will be back at 4:30 to introduce our final session of the day in the LinkedIn Live Lounge, where we will be discussing sales operations. So go get that coffee, and I'll see you soon.
Face-to-face relationships were essential to the way we worked. Now, clients have a new set of problems. LinkedIn Sales Navigator helps me connect with customers in this new reality. It's about putting the buyer first. Making sure you have a clear understanding of what they need is what's going to make the partnership successful.
Okay, everyone, it's time now to step into the LinkedIn Live Lounge. Our show today is titled The Great Sales Operation Act, which is our opportunity to explore in depth one of the most important aspects of sales strategy with an expert guest, Ade Adefulu, Director of Sales Operations, Marketing Solutions, EMEA and LATAM at LinkedIn. The topic for this afternoon is one that's fundamental to our organization's ability to cope with change, but which sometimes gets overlooked: sales operations. It's a function that often means different things in different organizations. For some, it's more about the functional logistics of sales, pipeline control, and the supporting technology. For others, it takes a more strategic role in determining the wider efficacy of sales efforts, how teams are structured, and how the market is evolving. In our customer panel, Stephen Kang, LinkedIn's Director of Sales Strategy and Operations for EMEA and LATAM, will discuss the evolving role of sales operations, its many functions, and how technology can support this profession. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Becky, and welcome everybody to the LinkedIn Live Lounge. This is a space where we get to stretch out, tune out the distractions, and explore an aspect of sales in depth. Today, we're going to focus on a part of the sales organization that is arguably one of the least understood, and yet suddenly one of the most important. We're talking about sales operations. Sales operations means different things in different organizations. In the traditional view, it's one of a background administrative role, responsible for activities like maintaining the CRM, processing orders, managing territories, and administering compensation plans. At LinkedIn and at a growing number of other companies, it means much more. Sales operations is a valued strategic partner. They provide the data and insights that inform sales strategies, go-to-market models, and sales methodologies, to name a few. They provide and equip sellers not just with tools, but with perspectives on the market and how to engage with buyers. And as we've heard throughout today's summit, these things are hugely valuable right now. Sales operations is also a balancing act between, on one hand, keeping the day-to-day on track, and on the other, transforming the business for the better. It's between supporting sales teams versus helping to push them forward. This year, that balancing act has only gotten harder. Every sales person and sales leader is hungry for data and insights to help them navigate and understand what's happening to the changing demand, understand what's happening to pipeline, and of course, build relationships in new virtual ways. They want sales operations not just to keep systems running, but they're depending on them to evolve strategy to meet the demands of a new selling landscape. And to help us make better sense of the challenges and opportunities, I'd like to welcome to the virtual stage a trusted sales operations leader who's taking on this role at LinkedIn, someone who I've had the pleasure to work with and learn from over the last few years. Ade Adefulu is Sales Operations Director for LinkedIn's Marketing Solutions business across EMEA and Latin America. Ade, it's a great pleasure to have you here today.
Hey, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the warm introduction, and thanks so much, guys, for the invite. I'm excited to hang out with the Sales Solutions crew.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. It's a big topic, and as always, not a lot of time. So I'm just going to dive right in. And I wanted to start with a little bit of context for the audience, just to talk about sales operations more broadly. How do you define sales operations, and how have you seen it change over the last year, over the last number of years?
Yeah, so I feel like you and Becky have basically stolen most of my thunder, which is fine. You guys did I thought a fabulous job of describing it. I'll try and I don't have a textbook definition. I have it's an evolving definition. Let's put it that way. I see primarily sales ops as a partner function. And in another sort of aspect that I'll call out, it's let's think about the name itself. We talk about sales operations. It is an inextricable part of sales itself. And I think that's really important, and I'll come onto why in a minute. And so when we think about that team, that organization partners very closely with our sales teams to set and execute strategy, to deliver operational rigor, so ensure that day-to-day operation that you spoke about happens and is consistent and repeatable. And then lastly, we look at sales operations as the function that ultimately helps deliver value to the end customer. And I know that in many organizations, as you and Becky both described, it means different things in different organizations. But at LinkedIn, and I think, and certainly in marketing solutions, the part of the organization that I work in, we see that the link between sales operations and the customer, not 2 or 3 degrees removed. There's a sense of ownership of the choices that we make, the policies, the strategy, the decisions ultimately impact our customer. So the customer for us is the absolute true north.
Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship with sales? I've heard one sales operations leader talk about the challenge of turnover. And every time a new VP of sales came into the organization, it was about ripping out strategy and doing something new.
Yeah.
How is it for you? Is it a VP of sales saying, hey, sales operations, this is what we're going to do? Or is it slightly different than that?
So my VP of sales is not on this call, so I will speak very freely. So in all seriousness, it is we have an excellent relationship, and it's a relationship that is characterized by challenge, by we are part of the same team. We run a leadership team. He obviously takes the final decisions, but in many cases, it's my job to make recommendations and to think about the business as a whole. So we work very, very closely together on both the large decisions and the small decisions. And part of that means a challenge. It is not, he will not be getting full potential from me and my organization if he literally just dictates something to us and then has us execute on that. And so a lot of times we have, it's a dialogue, and it creates healthy tension, not all the time, but often. It's very interesting. So Josh Graff, who leads our marketing solutions business, described it to my team, the relationship between sales and sales ops this way. He said, if you're always agreeing with your sales partner, then you need to look at the dynamic in the relationship. So even he sort of sets that expectation very much at the outset. I will say sales operations enjoys broad latitude within the business and significant sponsorship from the sales leader that cascades through the organization. I would not be able to do my job if that relationship were not healthy.
And what about this year? This year has obviously been a very challenging and interesting year for all of us.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of firefighting over the last 6 to 9 months. We talked about sales operations being a balance between, we call it running the business and transforming the business. Have you been able to focus on the latter to the degree that you would like, transforming the business, that is?
Yeah, this is a question that comes up all the time. Frankly, I joined LinkedIn about 4 years ago. And when I first joined, so running the business, I think you called it running the business or transforming the business. And we have different terms for it. So we talk about, strategy versus operations. And when I started, I think my team was probably 95% purely focused on operations and on firefighting. I don't think anyone would dispute that statement that was around at the time. And we realized that, again, we were not getting the full potential from the resource that is sales operations within the business. And we needed to pivot things over to ensure that we are driving strategy in the business, but also running that operational cadence that we are known for. And even the way we thought about operations changed. And so I think we're probably on balance now closer to 60 or 70% operations, 30% on what I call strategy. And I'll describe strategy in a second. I think what's important to realize is, and it's one of the things that I tell my team, one is not better than the other. So I end up hiring quite a few former consultants on my team who come on board and want to and love the staying at 20,000 feet and don't want to deal with any firefighting sort of questions from the business or just nitty gritty detail and dealing with sales quota, and that won't work. Ultimately, we have to hire people who can exist at 20,000 feet, but then also get really deep into the detail. And so this year, there was a little bit of a tweak that we had to do. So what our customers were looking for was they needed partners, thought partners, that would help them navigate this once in a century challenge that we all faced. And so that's what our teams then turned around to do, to ensure that they were partners to their customers. And we, in turn, as sales operations, we pushed back a little bit on the futuristic conversations, and then in order to obviously be relevant to what the business needed at the time, which absolutely made sense, we're more thoughtful about, let's ensure that we provide the insight needed at this time, but let's also influence the organization to stay on course. There was nothing broken about our fundamental business model or our value proposition. So that was kind of our job. We pivoted. We did a lot of analysis on where the relative strengths were, where the challenges were. We sat down with our sales partners and really talked through how do we help navigate our customers through this challenge. So it was so in this year, it really wasn't about transformation in as much as it was, let's all put our hands together and figure out the best way to steer and navigate this course. And I think we did a really good job of that. I think our business, fortunately, has returned to growth, but we're still constantly monitoring and ensuring that we stay on track as a business.
I love that. I love the flexibility that your team took despite all the chaos, if you will, that was happening over the last 6 to 9 months. And you started to talk about customers. Liam Halpin earlier in his keynote talked about this buyer first opportunity. He also talked about one of the key dependencies being having meaningful sales intelligence to be able to enable a buyer first approach. You obviously have access to a lot of data. Can you tell me a little bit about how you think about how sales operations can influence this buyers first approach?
Yeah, it's as I mentioned earlier, so I think a couple of things I said. One is that we feel a sense of ownership of the end customer, joint ownership with our sales partners, right? We are at the table together. So that's one. And two, I talked about the fact that we have we also lead the business on strategic effort. So one of the first things that we did, I think a couple of years ago, was to sit down and say, look, we run a portfolio business, right? Our business spans and portfolio from a market perspective. Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, the sheer diversity across all of those markets. So we needed a unifying vision and a strategy that the entire business could rally around. So we devised that, and ultimately what that led to was a 9-month process, strategic definition process that involved all the leaders in the business. Obviously, they came with their significant experience in sales, their knowledge of their customers, knowledge of their markets. And from a sales operations point of view, we brought our thinking, our strategic acumen, our rigor into the process, and we came up with a strategy. Surprise, surprise, the answer was, look, we need to be more customer centric. as a business. That was ultimately what everyone was saying, and so that's how we then built this view. So it's very similar to the buyer first approach, but we thought about customer centricity not just from a sales point of view, but across the board. We needed to effectively pivot our organization, every single function, sales operations, cross-functional partners, our cadences within the organization needed to focus squarely on creating delight for our customers. But it also involved understanding the customers in depth. We did so you mentioned the data that we have access to. We spend a lot of time, not just about data, but it's the insight that comes out of the data, and then which fuels the decisions that you ultimately took. So one insight on the customer lens, we found roughly 20% of our customers driving 70% of our revenue. And that 20% was also growing 60, 70% faster than the remaining 80% of customers. Well, that was significant. And of course, when we started having this conversation in the business, lots of people said, well, we know this already. And I said, yes, but what does it mean? And then what do we do about it? How do we go from data to insight to strategy to actual action? And so that's what our team pushed. And we started to share this knowledge with our sales leaders. Here's how your revenue is concentrated in your market. This is what it means. This is how we need to then think about who our high value customers are, and thinking about tiering our customers so that all of our scarce resources and our cross-functional teams can all be aligned in a thoughtful way across each of our customer segments. It's not necessarily earth-shattering, but when you are in the crucible of engaging with your customer, running day to day, it's really difficult to have to think through that. So we did that. We thought through that for the business, and then and worked with all of our sales leaders across the business to implement a system like that. So customer centricity for us is very, very much at the heart of our customer strategy. Very much relates to buyer first, but it is across the entire life cycle. All of the touch points that the customer really values within the business is arranged in such a way that to create delight and ultimately advocacy. That's in that way the customer will be successful and the business will be successful. So that's a way that we think about the concept of buyer first or customer first in marketing solutions.
Yeah, I love that. It's not, we're dependency. Obviously, the success of our business is dependent on the success of our customers. And it's kind of like this feedback loop that you have to think about. Yes. I also love that you talked about this progression of data to insights to action. Data for data's sake is not really useful unless you glean some insights out of it, and then obviously take some action upon that. And so I wanted to switch a little bit to the softer side of sales operations. The previous session or a bit earlier, Sinead talked about leading sales teams through change. You talked about implementing something new across the sales organization. Sales operations is generally known to be very analytically minded and analytically focused.
Yeah.
Have soft skills and emotional intelligence become more important in sales operations?
In a word, yes. Look, sales operations gets a bad rap. I think sometimes, and sometimes deserved, I would say. I think sometimes we can come off as analytical automatons who have thought through what we need to do and will just say, this is what's happening and we need to get it implemented. So frankly, again, going back to my original definition, it is a partnership. So we are at the table with our sales partners. That immediately implies that EQ, EQ be a key skill set for every single person on our team. So we talk about it. We talk about the challenges. I talk to my team about the challenges for our sales leaders and our sales teams, and to create that understanding and that empathy, that it is absolutely crucial. Some of the ways that we address it are just through communication. We spend a lot of time breaking communication down and into just the simplest and most palatable form. We think about ensuring that our leaders have the context behind every decision, and all the way down to the teams. We also partner with our sales managers if they're going to have potentially challenging conversations with the teams, and help them to understand, and even sometimes help them craft what that narrative will be back into the broader business. And so again, we're at the table. We don't phone it in, deliver a tough message, and then walk away. We're thoughtful about how we deliver that message and the context that we bring to bear. I think it's absolutely essential. Otherwise, you break that partnership dynamic, and it just doesn't work.
I've never heard the word automatons before. I've never been called an automaton, but I'm going to keep that word for the future.
Absolutely.
How do you think about morale, and how careful do you have to be about morale when it comes to things like allocating territories, and especially right now, setting quotas and incentive structures?
I am every time we make a decision, the first thing that runs through my mind is, how is this going to be received by my peers on the leadership team, and how is it going to be received by their managers and their teams? It is crucial. It is, and so we are concerned about morale pretty much across the board. For our leaders, who obviously are also concerned about morale of their leaders and their wider teams. And again, back to what I mentioned earlier, I don't think that changes the decisions that we take, because our objective is to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to be successful. And I say that, and it's well rehearsed because I say it every time, and I especially say it every time we have to hand out quotas. Everyone is set up to be successful. That's number one. But oftentimes, our numbers are stretchy. I'm pretty sure everyone on this call can attest to that, and they are stretchy for us as well. But we have a balancing act as well in ensuring, yes, we are part of the team, but we also stretch and push the business. So I sit down and I think about, all right, we're growing at 50% year over year. What should we be next year? What's a growth target that that we should be held to as an organization? And until it feels comfortable, I'm not convinced that until it feels uncomfortable, I'm not convinced that that's not the right goal. And then it's my job to then sell it to the leadership. And so I have many different, again, communication is half the job. I know I don't deliver bad news on email, for example. So I will have a conversation and I will talk through the logic behind it. I will show why I think this is achievable, but I will also commiserate and say, yes, it's a crazy number. And so, yes, concerned about morale, but also have to balance it with almost fiduciary responsibility to ensure that our business is growing at a very healthy clip.
Yeah. Some of the key words I heard you say were aspirational yet achievable. We do
Yes.
have a fiduciary responsibility.
Absolutely.
Everyone has an equal chance of success. We're not setting some people up for more success than others.
Absolutely.
We talked a lot about communication and context, and making sure everybody understands the context to changes or quotas that are being implemented.
Yeah, and Stephen, I'll say, when it works really well, that the fiduciary responsibility is not just in sales operations or the sales operations leadership. It is in the leadership. So Josh and I will sit down and talk about what is our growth path for the next 3 or 4 years. That's the conversation that we have. And it's not a growth path that is easy to achieve. We want and need to feel uncomfortable as a business that, okay, this is super aspirational. It's really scary. We hope we get there. We call them big, hairy, audacious goals. And we set one for ourselves to achieve by the end of fiscal year 22, which looked like fantasy when we did at the time. It turns out we're going to hit that number at the end of this fiscal year, right? It just gives you an indication of how just being that much more ambitious and the combination of the drive and determination of sales ops and sales can work together to push the business to more growth than we expected to be possible.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Can you talk a little bit about how you're incentivized? Because I think the way you're incentivized is very aligned to sales, and that may not be the case in other organizations.
Yes,
something that's helpful.
So this is a conversation I have almost every cycle. So I tell folks again, I want everyone to be successful, and if we miss our target as a business, I miss a target. So I am also on a sales compensation plan, and I think that was an ingenious idea at the time. So it happened well before my time. What it means is I have skin in the game, but again, the job is not for me to what we call at LinkedIn sandbag the numbers or limit the numbers as much as possible in order to personally attain. I would never look at that. Attainment for me is an outcome. What I think about always is growth. And I know if we set the growth in the right place and we energize our teams and solve for our customers in the way that we've come to do on a consistent basis, then ultimately I will be successful as well in the business overall. So my target is the same target that the VP of Sales, Josh, carries as well, right? And so I speak to my peers and frankly the wider business and say, look, I'm on a sales target as well. You're worried about your quota, I'm worried about mine, but I'm not going to take a decision on a commercial level to solve for my quota. Never done it and have never had to worry about it.
Super, super interesting. I wanted to pivot a little bit to, I know you've talked a lot about and you do and have been helping the sales teams adjust to this new selling environment. How have you found it though as a sales operations team, working remotely? Do you like being at home, being away from what I'll call the flybys of sales teams coming by your desks and asking questions, or has it been harder and more challenging?
As I think it is for a lot of people on this call, it's a mixed bag. I love being there when my kids are going to school in the morning or dropping them to school in the morning, being there when they come back. And you know, I was exercising and doing some stretches with my wife at lunch yesterday. That just never happened. I did not have the time or the bandwidth to do that. So on that element of spending more time with family than I ever have, absolutely love it. On the team front, this is a hard job. Someone at one of the leaders in our business described sales operations as one of the most challenging jobs in the business. And I think what made it frankly, not just less challenging, but delightful was the connection and the sense of shared purpose that you have with your team. So what we lose a little bit of that connection, frankly, a lot of it when we are virtual. And that has proven really challenging. We tried to, as many people did, we tried to replace all of those things with Zoom meetings, which nearly killed us. And so we stopped that relatively quickly. And I think we've boiled the work down to the tasks related to the work, which isn't in and of itself fantastic. And so what we started to do is reimagine a team that was intentionally designed for working from home. That's what we started looking at as a team. And the other thing that we pivoted to, it caused us to ask what I would characterize as quite existential questions. So we started to ask, why do we do what we do? So we spent time defining our purpose as a team and putting together what was a purpose statement. And all that did was galvanize the team, refocus us, and then we looked for opportunities to create that connection. We certainly prefer being face-to-face, but we have found ways to be resilient and make it work and ensure that we're focusing on only the right things.
I love that. Taking the opportunity to reassess, to find purpose. I love that point. I'm going to bring us home now, and I'm going to ask one last question to you, which is, where do you see sales ops going in the future? How do you see it evolving?
So I think a couple of dimensions. One, I think this concept of partnership, this seamlessness between sales and sales operations, I expect that to deepen. I think there'll be, I don't think you get full potential out of the sales operations function if you turn it into a back office admin function. You don't. What you need to do is get really good thinkers into the business, ensure that the operational rigor is at the heart of everything you do, but you are absolutely strategic in how you implement that. So I think that will happen more and more as people see that as a winning formula. I also think that there might be a little bit of blurring the lines. I've seen people move from sales into sales operations. I expect sales operations folks, and I know a lot of sales operations people who are passionate enough about the customer to want to pivot over into sales. And I think that is a potential competitive advantage for the business. And you think about someone who lives and breathes the business, the product, understands our customers, understands systems and processes, but really has a heart to work and partner even more closely with customers. And particularly if they come with some industry discipline that's absolutely relevant, I can see that being, again, just creating that seamlessness between sales and sales operations.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I think there's a lot more shared experiences that go across sales operations and sales that one might initially think. Well, Adi, that's all the time we have for today. I wanted to thank you for all of your valuable insights. I'm sure the audience has a lot to think about and a lot to take away. But thank you again for joining us here at our summit.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great. And I'll turn it back over to Becky Schnaufer now.
Thank you, Stephen and Ade, for a fascinating discussion. Whatever your company's interpretation of sales operations, LinkedIn knows that big data such as ours is driving deeper and better insights for sales teams, and the importance of sales intelligence is on the rise. It's another example of how the constraints and the challenges that we've been coming up against can start to bring about new ways of operating, new solutions that work better for sales organizations by working better for buyers. As Liam pointed out to us in our opening keynote, there's really no going back to the way that sales operated before the arrival of the pandemic. That's because of the challenges that we continue to face with COVID-19 and the restrictions it involves. But more importantly, it's because our buyers don't want to go back to that way of doing business. They've made it clear, clearer than ever before, what they want now from their experience with sales. As sales leaders, I think we all recognize that the way to move forward is to align our strategies with those expectations. It's not easy. It involves some big challenges and changes for people in our organizations. And of course, we're having to navigate those changes and challenges while spending most of our time socially distanced, which places extreme demands on leaders and coaches as well. But as we've heard from many of our guests here, it is possible, it is happening. And through a buyer-first approach, many organizations are able to commit to making changes and are finding ways for their sellers and their buyers to thrive. At LinkedIn Sales Solutions, we're here to help. It's not just about the technology, although as Lindsay demonstrated so well, the right tools can make a difference. It's also about advice, sharing experiences and learning from one another. We're traveling along a similar journey to you. Like you, we've been thinking long and hard about what our customers need and about how we can adjust our approach to put the buyer first. That's something we are always ready to talk to you about. I am thrilled that you could all join us today for the LinkedIn Sales Leaders Summit 2020. And I hope you've been able to take away some real value from this afternoon. We really do hope to see you soon in person and that you enjoyed the live virtual experience. Now, just a quick reminder, our virtual library will remain open, so you can check back at any time you like for more support, advice, and thinking on sales. I particularly recommend our on-demand virtual panels, which you probably didn't have time to watch today, but are a great viewing for later on. If you enjoyed what you've heard today or would like to learn more, you can either speak with your LinkedIn rep, request a demonstration on the event hub page, or browse our content library for more sales and strategy resources. Now, before you go, your feedback is so extremely valuable to us. There is a short anonymous survey under the live stream, and we would really appreciate it if you could provide us with your feedback so that we can keep improving our virtual event experience and content. And now all that's left for me to say is to wish you all the very best. And I look forward to welcoming you to one of our virtual events again very soon. Thank you.